Good morning. If you have your Bibles, open to Daniel 7. Daniel chapter 7, that is where we'll be this morning. Daniel chapter 7. It's good to be here with you. It's good to be able to worship God together. It is a blessing every week to do this, and I hope that you see it as a blessing as well. Have you ever had a really weird dream before? Maybe the night before you ate some questionable old pizza or some kind of other leftover, and you just had very unexplainable, weird dreams. Yeah, so a couple of people have had that. Well, we're going to look at a couple of weird dreams that Daniel had. Daniel, we've been going through the book of Daniel. Every last Sunday of the month, we just take a chapter and we look at it, and we want to see what that chapter has to say for us today. Kind of the general theme of Daniel has been, how do you live as a man of God in a world of godliness? Daniel was a foreigner. He was an exile. He was not in his home. And he was challenged in every chapter we have, either him or his friends, to give up his faithfulness to God. And over again, he showed how to stand firm and yet do it in a loving way over and over again. And so us, we are not home. We are not in our ultimate home. We are foreigners in our land. How do we stand firm when we are challenged by godless people in our world? And that's kind of the general theme. And if you notice the first 6 chapters of it, it's been different narratives. It's been different narratives how Daniel and his friends have stood up, whether it be eating certain things, or not bowing down to idols, or refusing to stop praying to God. We have these stories that take place that show us of their faithfulness and how we can be like them. Chapter 7 makes a dramatic shift in Daniel. Daniel 7 through the end of the book, chapter 12, are about Daniel's visions and different dreams that he's had, different visions that God had given him, specifically telling him about the future, and ultimately giving him hope. That was the intended purpose of this. God wasn't just saying, okay, here's a bunch of random stuff that's going to happen in the future after you're dead. The intended purpose was good. It was that Daniel and then every person that read of Daniel's visions would have hope. That these empires would not be all that is. That God wouldn't make all wrongs right. That he would set up his eternal kingdom. And so if you just hold on, if you stay faithful, God will make it right. And that is kind of the whole overarching theme of these words. Daniel chapter 7, and let's go ahead and read verses 1 through 8, and then we'll talk about it. Daniel chapter 7, verse 1 through 8. In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel saw a dream and visions in his head as he laid in bed. Then he wrote down the dream and told the sum of the matter. Daniel declared, I saw my vision by night, and behold, the 4 winds of heaven were stirring up a great sea, and 4 great beasts came up out of the sea, different from one another. The first was like a lion that had eagle's wings. Then I looked, and its wings were plucked off, and it was lifted up from the ground and made to stand on 2 feet like a man, and the mind of man was given to it. And behold, another beast, a second one, like a bear. It was raised up on one side, and had 3 ribs in its mouth between its teeth. And it was told, arise and devour much flesh. And after I looked, and behold, another, like a leopard, it had 4 wings of a bird on its back. And the beast had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. After this, I saw in the night visions, behold, a 4th beast, terrifying and dreadful, and exceedingly strong, and a great iron teeth, and it devoured and broke pieces and stamped what was left with its feet. It was different from all the beasts that had come before it, and it had 10 horns. I considered the horns, and behold, there came upon them another horn, a little one, before which 3 of the first horns were plucked up by its roots. And behold, this horn were eyes of a man and a mouth speaking great things. I doubt you had a dream like that last night, no matter what you ate. I wonder what David ate the night before he had this one. This is a really weird dream. Like, why is this in the Bible? Why do we need to know about all of these different beasts, and this lion beast, and this bear with the ribs in his mouth, and this leopard with the wings, and this great exceedingly, this fourth beast that's unlike the other ones? Why do we need to know these things? Why is this in the Bible? And just being honest, like, we each are going through our own stuff in life. We're going through our own temptations, our own struggles, our own sufferings, our own trials, whatever it may be. And then you come to church and you listen to a guy read about somebody's weird dream they had last night. What does that have to say to us? Is this really for us? And I say it has everything to do with our lives. So if you just stick with me, and we'll get through this weird dream, and then hopefully at the end of it, you'll see how it can make a profound impact on the way you look at your lives. Look at these four beasts with me. You had these four different beasts, a lion, a bear, a leopard, and this fourth beast that's more dreadful than every one of them. Now, I personally think that there are particular things that these animals represent. And these symbols are not unlike some of the things that we have today. Instead of a lion, a leopard, and a bear, and of this fourth beast, we used donkeys and elephants instead to represent our different things. And it's kind of the same principle. And instead of maybe a great horn, there would be a guy with orange hair or a really old white guy in this cartoon kind of character on top of an element or on top of a donkey. It's the same type of thing. It's a political cartoon, as it were. These are animals that have significance and that illustrate different kinds of kingdoms. Now, I think there are specific kingdoms that these particular animals are supposed to represent. However, I think they're not just to represent those. I think these beasts are to be a representative of every single horrible, dictatorial beast of a kingdom that seeks to put its place above God. If you just look at the characteristics of all the beasts, what kind of sticks out to you? What are some of their similarities? Well, they're all very horrible and disfigured, and they're repulsive and they're ugly. They're not things to be they're not supposed to look like that. They're just figures of creation and of what God made it to be. They're also very violent and they destroy things. Now, and one was told to devour much flesh. Another one was given a dominion and just broke pieces and stamped what it didn't break. It devoured a lot of flesh and a lot of things. These are very ugly and terrible and destructive and murderous beasts. That's what you're supposed to get out of this. All of these nations are like this. All of these beasts are like this. And if these beasts are supposed to represent kingdoms of nations, I don't think we have to look back in our history of our very long in history of our world to see some of the same things. The days of Assyria and Babylon and the Persian Empire and the Greek Empire, they were horrible and they caused mass destruction and they killed millions of people. But we have some of those same empires around 100 years ago, 50 years ago. Adam, who was the king of Uganda for a while in the 20th century, he killed 500,000 in his reign. The Turkish government has killed up to 600,000 Armenians in a single day. Pol Pot was responsible for 2 million Cambodians. The Nazis killed 11 million non-combatants. Stalin is responsible for up to 20 million killed because of his starvation techniques. 20 to 40 million were killed because of the decisions of Mao and the starvation they caused. And not to leave us on our hands as Americans unclean, 45 million unborn babies have been murdered since Roe v. Wade. Every kingdom, every nation has a foundation of destruction and bloodshed. And it's ugly. And that's what these beasts are to represent. These are the kingdoms, the nations, the people that have decided they want to run their nation, their people, themselves, how they want to run them, and seize power for themselves and trample anyone who gets in the way, even if it means the lives of millions of innocent people. And you have this horn that is the prototypical person of it all. This horn that is shouting boastful things, that is these great elaborate things, these boastful things of how great he is and how he's the one in charge and no one can stand in his way. Do you think that living under a beast like this, a nation like this, would weigh on you? That you would have this hope? God's got to do something. He's got to change it. He's got to make it so that there's innocent lives are not constantly lost. And in this middle of this vision of these beasts and this terrifying image and this horn shouting boastful things, the scene cuts. And look at verse 8. As I looked, thrones were placed, and the Ancient of Days took his seat, and his clothing was white as snow, and the hair of his head was like pure wool, and his throne was fiery flames, and his wheels were burning fire. And a stream of fire issued and came from before him. Thousands upon thousands served him, and 10,000s of 10,000 stood before him. And the court sat in judgment, and the books were opened. It looked like the sound of great words that the horn was speaking, and it looked, and the beast was killed, and its body destroyed and given over with burning of fire. And as for the rest of the beasts, their dominion was taken away, but their lives were prolonged for a season and for a time. In the middle of all this destruction, this horribleness that the beasts are causing, suddenly pops up this being that just rips your eyes away from these beasts. The Ancient of Days. The Ancient of Days, with his clothing as white as snow and his hair like pure wool. He's pure and he's perfect. And notice his throne. It's like a hot rod. It has fiery flames and its wheels with burning fire. Meaning like it's going everywhere. His throne is movable. It's not stationary. And fire is coming off of it. Fire does what? It purifies. It judges. It makes things clean. And around him are thousands and 10,000s. Innumerable people that are there to serve him. And he's sitting in judgment. These beasts, these nations that trample and kill, they were brought to judgment. And they are brought into actions for what they've done. It is so easy to focus on the beast and what they are causing, so much destruction and how they influence their lives. But I think something that we're supposed to take from this is that we are supposed to keep our focus on the Ancient of Days, on his throne. It is so easy to look at the beast of our time, the horrible people that just do awful things on this world. We look at the news, we look at the horrible things on Twitter and the horrible things that people do around the world. I mean, if you pay attention, it's going on everywhere, it seems. But our hope is not in that. We need not to get lost in that. We are to keep our focus on the Ancient of Days. And that one day he will come and he will make all things right. And he'll take all the authority and the dominion from these beasts and give it to the Son of Man. And that's who comes on the scene next, in the next two verses, verse 13 and 14. And I saw in the night visions, behold, with the clouds of heaven, there came like a Son of Man. And he came to the Ancient of Days, and he was presented before him. And to him was given dominion and glory and a kingdom, that all peoples and nations and languages should serve him. And his dominion is an everlasting dominion, which shall not pass away, and his kingdom one that shall not be destroyed. The Son of Man, literally the human one. The Son of Man comes to the scene, and all the dominion authority is taken away from these beastly nations that perverted the rule that they had, and it is given to the Son of Man. The Son of Man is given all glory and kingdoms and peoples and nations and everything, and his kingdom will never end. Who is the Son of Man? Look at verse 18. We won't be able to read the second half of this chapter just for time, but it's interpretation of what he saw in the first half. But look at verse 18. But let's look at verse 17 and then 18. These four great beasts are the four kings who shall rise up out of the earth. But the saints of the Most High shall receive the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever and ever. Who is the Son of Man? It is the saints of God. It is God's people who is the Son of Man. Can you think of a people of God who have been trampled by the beast over and over again? Who tried to live the best that they can, and yet the beast just tries to trample them over and over again? Well, that's Daniel and his friends. They are those people that have tried to serve God, and they are good and God people, but they keep on getting trampled, and they keep getting the nations, no matter what nation it is, if it's Babylon or Persia, trying to trample them over and over again. They are a narrative example of what God's people have been and will always be. People who stick out and the beast tries to trample. There's something very similar to this in Revelation about what happens in their days. And one day, God is saying this will change. The Ancient of Days will make it right, because this is not how the world was intended to be. If you remember back in creation, and the people that have been coming to the Wednesday night class will have a little extra leg up on this. What was the intended authority order that God gave the world? It's supposed to be God, it was supposed to be man, then it was supposed to be the animals, the beast. That was the intended authority of order. God, humanity, beast. God gave humanity a privileged place that they could rule over his creation. However, Adam and Eve in Genesis 3, they decided to give up their rule and listen to a beast, a serpent. They decided to listen to a beast, and it ruled over them instead. And then their son did the same thing with Cain. He did the same thing. His beastly sin ruled over him, and he killed his brother. Or you could say he destroyed and devoured flesh. And then all through Genesis, if you look at the story of man, they build cities, and they grow in power, and they grow in might. And what do they do with that might? They oppress each other, and they murder each other, and they take authority over each other. And they don't rule the world like God intended it. God says one day that beast will be put down. And man will have its rightful place again. And the authority ladder will once again be like it should be. But there's another layer to this. Because when I said, who is the Son of Man, I'm guessing humanity wasn't your first guess. It's Jesus. Jesus is the Son of Man. And what's really amazing is, what is the term that Jesus constantly referred to himself as? It's the Son of Man. It's not Christ, although other people would call him Christ, and he accepted that. What he constantly referred to himself as is the Son of Man, and it's specifically from this passage. Daniel 7 just summarized everything about who Jesus was and what he did on this earth, that he used that term, that title, to describe what he was doing on this earth. And I want to look at one specific time in which he used it. I think it's probably the most blatant. I think it's probably the time that just kind of exemplifies all the other times. It's in Matthew chapter 26. If you have Bibles, you can turn there with me. Matthew chapter 26. This is after Jesus has been arrested. He's been in the Garden of Gethsemane. He had a prayer. He's been arrested. And now he's taken before Caiaphas and the Sanhedrin Council. If you look at chapter 26, Matthew chapter 26, starting in verse 57. Then those who had seized Jesus led him to Caiaphas, the high priest, where the scribes and the elders had been gathered. And Peter was following from a distance as far as the courtyard of the high priest. Going inside, he sat with the guards to see the end. Now the chief priests and the whole council were seeking false testimony against Jesus, that they may put him to death. But they found none, though many false witnesses came forward. At last, two came forward and said, "This man said, I will destroy the temple of God and rebuild it in 3 days." And the high priest stood up and said, "Have you no answer to make? What is it that these men have testified against you?" But Jesus remained silent. And the high priest said to him, "I adjure you, by the living God, tell us if you are the Christ, the Son of God." Jesus said to him, "You have said so. But I tell you, from now on you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power, coming on the clouds of heaven." The high priest tore his robes and said, "He has uttered blasphemy. What further witness do we need? You have now heard this blasphemy. What is your judgment?" They answered, "He deserves death." Let's say that you went to a Star Wars convention and you showed up and you were in a black mask, black helmet with black cape, black suit, and you had a lightsaber, and you went up to someone and said, "I am your father." What person are you embodying in that moment? Darth Vader. I was trying to pick an example that I thought a majority of us would be on. Darth Vader, right? And the person that you are saying, "I am your father" to, what person are they now characterizing? Luke Skywalker. Pretty simple. You don't have to explain, "Okay, I'm just Darth Vader, this isn't real, I'm not actually your father." They're at a Star Wars convention. They understand that. Jesus is in a room full of Bible nerds. They know the Bible backwards and forwards. They read it all their life. They understand it. And so when Jesus says, "I am the Son of Man, and I will be seated at the right hand of the power, and I will be coming in clouds of heaven," what character is he saying he is? the Son of Man in Daniel 7. He doesn't have to explain it. Everyone understands. He's putting himself as an authority, the prototypical human that will be given that authority. What place is he putting Caiaphas and Sanhedrin? If he's the Son of Man, who are they? They're the beast. They're the beast that are going to devour his flesh. They're the beasts that are going to destroy. They are the beast that has been prototypical of every nation and kingdom and rulers who've taken their own self-will and their self-governing and their selfishness and destroyed innocent lives to keep it. They are the beast. And what Jesus is saying is the time that you try to conquer me and destroy me, I will conquer you. From this point, they kill him, and he conquers them through his death and his resurrection. What makes humans different than animals? What makes humans different than animals? We can tell our desires, the wants of our body, no. Even sometimes the needs of our body, we say no. Animal, it just does what it instinctually is told to do. It goes and finds food. It goes, hunts and kills. It goes and grazes. It goes and has sex. It goes and multiplies. It does all that instinctually. It just does it. We as humans are given the ability to say, this is what my body wants and desires, and I'm not going to do it. It's really easy to think of the beast as just these brutal nations that have existed and that will continue to exist, that trample the innocent and trample those around us. But if we are really honest with ourselves, there's a beast in us. There's a part of us that if we don't keep it in check, will do the same kind of things. It may be in small ways, it may be in little things, but we will take our own selfish desires and what we want and our own selfishness, and we will hurt other people through it. We have a beast in us. And if you don't let Jesus conquer you, conquer that beast now, and put away those desires, and put away those fleshly things that we want to do, our own selfishness, if you don't let him conquer that now, through his death and resurrection, then one day you will be conquered in the day of judgment. And you don't want that day. The Son of Man became like us to show us how we can become like the Son of Man. How we can say no to our desires. How we can say, not your will, not my will, but your will be done. And I hope that we are each able to tell our beast no and God yes. If we can help you at all this morning, if we can help you in that life, maybe you've been telling the beast yes and you've been giving in to sin, we would love to help you. If you need to make things right with God, you can come forward as we stand, as we sing.